I think we're due for another horror review, so I'm here with 3 books that I just read within the last week or so that I thought were really good. And we'll start with this one, which is Suffer the Children by Craig DeLuey. Now, this book I started physically on my Kindle, and then I ended up just making dinner one day, started listening to it as an audiobook on Spotify. If you're not hip, by the way, I would check out and see what books are on Spotify, because they might have one that you've been wanting to read and it's already included in your subscription. There are a few reputable titles on Spotify, by the way, so if you have a subscription, I would definitely check into the audiobooks that they have. They have quite a few horror ones, and some that are very recent. The September House, I forget who that's by. It's kind of a horror story, haunted house horror story. But that one is on there. I've heard great things. And then Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Basterica. I don't know how to say the last name. I'm so sorry. But that one's on there. Everyone's been talking about that. Highly recommend maybe just listening to that one. And what else? The Troop by Nick Cutter is on there. I think maybe The Deep by Nick Cutter might be on there as well. But there are a few. Like, if you go and look, there are a few. And there's another one that I'll talk about in a different video that I heard good things about. It's like a medieval horror. They use different sound effects and music and all sorts of things to make it very atmospheric. And I've heard great things about the listening experience of that book. So watch out for a video for that. But basically, this one is kind of like a vampiric kind of horror story. Nothing too spooky, nothing too crazy, no extreme horror type vibes, or splatterpunk type vibes. But basically, all the kids, I think in the world, randomly kind of die one day. And then 3 days later, they resurrect, come back to life. And the story is basically, I feel like it has elements of grief. It's not grief in the sense of This Thing Between Us by Gus Marino, or not necessarily grief in the same vein as Tender is the Flesh either. I'm looking at my bookshelf. But grief in the way of, if you're a parent and your kid comes back to life and they're completely different and they need something else to sustain them, what will you do as a parent? Will you go to all the lengths just to keep them alive? But I thought this was a good book. I again started it physically. I think I already said that, but started it physically on my Kindle, and then I finished it as an audiobook. And I'm glad that I finished it that way. I just felt like, I feel like it was more about what the parents would do for their children rather than just like the craziness of the children themselves. Don't mind the water running. But yeah, highly recommend. I feel like the ending was pretty predictable. But I gave it a solid, I think, 4 stars, 3.5 stars perhaps. This next one I already chatted about, but I loved it. Dying Sheep. It's a horror novella. It's only 120 pages, 100-ish pages, by Jesse D'Angelo. And my goodness, like, I'm part of a horror Facebook horror book arc group on Facebook, and so different readers can be on there and different authors are on there. The authors post their books that they want reviewed, and then the readers are given a free ARC copy to read and review before the book is finally released. But this book is such an interesting concept, I think. It's extreme horror, it's definitely splatterpunk, which I really love that. I love that the authors don't hold back. Like, it's kind of crazy to see what people come up with as far as these books go, but I love that it has no limits. And I feel like it's what I would love to see from horror in movies, but I'm pretty sure, almost positive, that a lot of them wouldn't get away with putting in the content that these authors put in these books. But basically it follows the storyline of this serial killer who has killed people before, but he isn't really caught until he kills his wife and children. And he's basically on death row. He dies tomorrow. Someone comes and pays him a visit and is like, hey, how would you like to be on this reality TV show in hell once you die? And he's laughing. He's like, okay, yeah, sure, man. Like, sounds great. Whatever. I can kill as many people as I want. Sure. I'll come back after I'm dead. Okay. So basically, he's in the electric chair, he dies, he wakes up in, the morgue, I guess, and the manager guy who talk to him the day before. It's like, hey, all right, let's go to hell, let's get you set up, I'll show you around, we can watch a show, see how other people do it, so that you're ready for your own. Kind of giving like 80s slasher film vibes as well, because also the technology isn't as advanced Earth side, but it is more advanced within the hell realm. So in hell, like, they have phones, like maybe smartphones and things, but when it comes to like people on Earth, I think it's still like 80s vibes, landlines, that sort of thing. But basically each killer is assigned like a little job to do on Earth, and they have 24 hours on Earth, which is 2 hours hell time, and they go back to Earth. I think they have like 3 times that they can die before they're like dead completely, and that's like the end of the show. But their job is to kill each person that they're tasked to kill. And in this case, it's like kind of going in the same vein of a 80s horror slasher film. I think it's mostly teenagers. So he's like going back, he goes to this cabin, he's set out to kill this group of teenagers that's on like a little vacation or something. So the second book is Dying Sheep 2, similar vibes as Dying Sheep, the first book. There's some unfinished business that the serial killer has, though, so he wants to go back and clear up that unfinished business. And then after he does, he's tasked with another group of teenage kids to go ahead and kill. Again, just as interesting, I think. I really liked the setting. I thought it was really creative, some of the elements that the author included in this one. And I felt like some of the kills, if you will, were a little bit more creative as well. But just the whole concept, super creative, super interesting. I think he does plan to do a third book. That's how it sounded in some of the responses that I saw to reviews that people were making. The author was responding. So I'm interested to see what he does with this next one. But I definitely, like, if you like splatterpunk horror, highly recommend either of these two.